As discussed in Module 5, framer Alexander Hamilton was a strong advocate of a powerful national government. Hamilton believed in an interpretation of the Constitution called loose construction, that the necessary and proper clause in the Constitution, also known as the elastic clause, allowed the national government to do whatever was necessary and proper for the smooth governing of the nation. This enabled an expansion of the national government. Hamilton argued Congress had the power to create a centralized bank because of this elastic clause. A political showdown between Maryland and the federal government occurred when James McCulloch, an agent for the Baltimore branch of the Second National Bank of the United States, refused to pay a tax that Maryland had imposed on all out-of-state chartered banks. The standoff raised two constitutional questions. The first was, did Congress have the authority to charter a national bank? Were states allowed to tax federal property? In the 1819 Supreme Court case, McCulloch versus Maryland, Chief Justice John Marshall argued that Congress could create a national bank even though the Constitution did not expressly authorize it. Under the Necessary and Proper Clause of Article 1, Section 8, the Supreme Court asserted that Congress could establish all means which are appropriate to fulfill the legitimate ends of the Constitution. In other words, the bank was an appropriate instrument that enabled the national government to carry out several of its enumerated powers, such as regulating interstate commerce, collecting taxes, and borrowing money. For example, the federal government's right to enact a draft, which occurred for the first time during the Civil War and was called a conscription but renamed a draft during World War I, is considered necessary for Congress to declare and wage war, for example. So Congress's right to do so can be found in the Necessary and Proper Clause. The McCulloch ruling established the doctrine of implied powers, granting Congress a vast source of discretionary power to achieve its constitutional responsibilities. Here, the Supreme Court also sided with the federal government on the issue of whether states could tax federal property. Under the Supremacy Clause of Article 6, legitimate national laws trumped conflicting state laws. Let's clarify these different types of powers before moving on. Implied powers are inferred from delegated powers. Delegated powers are those specifically assigned to the jurisdiction of the national government. Inherent powers are those integral to the national sovereignty, such as the power to declare war, necessary in the conduct of foreign policy. Delegated and inherent powers are also called enumerated powers because they are explicitly stated or listed in the Constitution. Another enumerated power of Congress, again meaning those specifically written into the Constitution, is the power to impeach. Article 1, Section 3 states that the House alone shall have the political power to make this accusation, and the Senate shall have the sole power to try all impeachments. Two presidents have been impeached, Andrew Jackson and Bill Clinton, but neither were removed from office because of the impeachment. Both of them received the simple majority vote in the House, but in both cases fell short of the 2/3 vote needed in the Senate for removal. President Richard Nixon resigned before facing impeachment. Impeachment will be discussed further in Module 1.2. Congress also has the power to regulate and discipline itself. The most severe form of discipline is expulsion, which requires a 2/3 vote. During the Civil War, a number of congressmen were expelled, but many of them served in the Confederate Congress in Richmond, Virginia. Another form of discipline is censure. That's a formal reprimand, and this too happens very rarely. Short of censure, congressional ethics committees can write formal letters of admonishment, offering warnings for behavior not becoming a congressman. With the exception of treason, felony, or breach of peace, congressmen cannot be arrested while Congress is in session. They also cannot be arrested for something they said during congressional speeches or debate. This is to protect unpopular viewpoints. Speaking of being arrested, as per Article 1, Section 9, Congress specifically does not have the power to do certain things, such as make an act illegal after it has already been performed. In other words, no post facto laws can be made. Congress is also forbidden except in times of war or insurrection, from suspending habeas corpus, which in Latin means you have the body. This means that a person has the right to be brought before a judge who will explain the charges clearly against the prisoner. Congress also does not have the power to create nobility. While the Kennedys have been called American royalty, and First Lady Jackie Kennedy helped cement this image in the minds of the public with interviews about how the president liked the music of the musical Camelot. Camelot's about a castle and a court, legendary King Arthur. They were not, in fact, members of the nobility. Section 8 of Article 1 is by far the most detailed section. It gives Congress the power to establish post offices and coin money. Coining money happens at the U.S. Mint. It also gives Congress the power to print paper money, and this occurs at the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. And finally, it gives Congress the power to tax, and we'll be talking about that extensively in the next module, Module 1.1.2. Continue to do your readings and review this video and answer your questions.